Good afternoon, dear colleagues. We're starting our Zoom webinar now with the participants today who are willing to become candidates to the High Qualification Commission of Judges of Ukraine, and also with the two selection commission members that are vetting those candidates, where we will be discussing the issues around some of the things that might have been come across regarding your further applications. On the 15th of July, 2022, the Selection Commission has resumed its operation after the war had started. So the application period will last till the 22nd of August this year. As a result of this selection process, the Selection Commission will select 32 candidates, that 16 of whom will be appointed to HQCJ. I would like to encourage the participants, if you have the possibility, to please open your cameras. The meeting will be recorded. You'll be able to see ourselves and each other as well. And I'm sure it's going to be a much more enabling environment this way. What do we expect from this webinar? We have to figure out what are the typical mistakes that people make in their application submissions. You'll be explained the conditions of the selection process and the changes that have been out there so far in the rules of procedure that were approved in the Selection Commission meeting.
Я не чую. Так, ага. Тоді технічно зразу щось зроблю, скажу.
Right, I'm going to make a technical announcement. So please turn off your microphones if you're not talking, because there was someone talking at the same time, and it's quite challenging to interpret when two people are speaking at a time. Thank you so much. I'm sorry for the disturbance. I would like to introduce to you two our keynote speakers who will be taking part in the meeting, and myself as the moderator. I'm Nadia Stefaniev, the president of the Ukrainian Association of Women Judges. This organization is the co-host of this meeting, and also there's somebody else speaking as well. Again, Marina Solovyova, as far as I can see your mic is on. So please make sure your microphones are off, unless you're given the floor. So today we're going to have Robert Brookhuizen, a Selection Commission member. You can see Mr. Robert, he is online here with us. Just in a nutshell about him, this is a great professional who graduated from the University of Leiden. He was the lawyer. In the past, he was managing a law firm. He was a special prosecutor between 2005 in the Netherlands. He was actually responsible for investigating some of the high-profile corruption-related cases in the Netherlands. He was fighting fraud, especially the large-scale one. I think his professionalism will enable us to really have very professional selection process, and our candidates will be evaluated by the highest professionals. And Johan Mezentsev, also another selection commission member. He's the member of the sixth appellate court. Before, he had been working in the prosecution. He was also in charge of the law firm, was representing the interests of entrepreneurs. He was also a judge of the commercial court in the Donetsk region, also the deputy chief judge. And you can see his career is continued. Right now, he is a member of the selection commission as well. And this is also very great because this is a judge. It means that this person knows how to select judges, and he knows he has a lot of expertise about the judiciary. So this is in a nutshell regarding the introduction of our speakers, and it is my pleasure now to give the floor to Yevhen Mezentsev for the welcoming remarks. The welcoming remarks will be really short, and then Mr. Robert. Please, Yevhen. Regarding my welcoming remarks, I'm so glad that we have 40 plus participants today. We have issues to discuss. We already have certain statistic about this initial phase of the selection process. We have received from you, dear colleagues, some of the questions that we will be elaborating and discussing today. They're not that challenging, actually. I'm sure we can find common sense in all of those items. So once again, I'm so glad to see you. Hopefully, we're going to be collaborating very fruitfully. Thank you. And just briefly, Mr. Broekhuizen, some of the welcoming remarks from your side from the Netherlands.
Hello all. I'm really happy to participating in this webinar. I am here, as they say, because I'm a foreign expert, and I'm the only non-judge in our commission. So I will be most attentive for the non-judges that will apply in our competition. What you see now is my office in the Netherlands. I'm a practicing lawyer. I'm also a judge in the disciplinary court of appeal here. And of course, I bring very different experience than you will have in Ukraine, especially under the difficult circumstances in Ukraine at present. And I will do all my best to assist regarding, let's say, the rules and how to participate and the administrative issues. Yevhen is much more, let's say, up to speed than I am. And of course, we should avoid, let's say, language and translation issues. So I hope you don't mind that Yevhen does most of the talking, and he's very well geared to do lots of talking.
Thank you, sir.
Well, that's what I wanted to say to you. Thank you.
Дякую вам, пане Роберте.
Thank you very much, Robert. I would like to remind you, all the participants, that you can actually hear the interpretation by selecting the language that seems to be most comfortable to you between English and Ukrainian, so you can actually understand what Mr. Robert is saying if you do not speak English. I can see that all our participants have joined already. It's going to be really important and interesting for us to get all the details and as much information as possible about how the Commission has resumed its operation, what kind of gaps have been identified so far, and what are the most typical mistakes that people have been making in their application procedures. And also, they will tell us a bit about some of the changes that took place in the rules of procedure. So I'm going to pass the floor to Yevhen Mezentsev to discuss some of those items that I just mentioned. Let us start with the changes, because that's going to be a very short discussion, because those issues are very obvious and apparent. We've done some of the changes that could contribute even more to our candidates to enjoy their rights in the selection process. We realize right now they're facing problems with the submission of the declaration data. Despite any individual can submit the declaration, the asset declarations, those declarations are not available right now on the website. To avoid any mistakes in trying to print out those documents, or whenever the document might include a lot of personal data that will not be disclosed. We decided to do it that way. Instead of the declaration, any individual will submit the proof of having submitted this declaration. After this, we're going to go to the National Agency on the Prevention of Corruption. We agreed upon collaboration with them, and they will then hand over all those declarations over the last couple of years submitted by the candidate, apart from the personal data that should be kept unavailable and never to be disclosed. And there is another small issue. It is related to the criminal record proof. So answering this question in advance, you don't have to get the new criminal record certificate if you had received one before the war started. Because anyways, the commission will be checking all that information through the Ministry of Interior, whether there is any criminal record or persecution against the candidate. That's obvious that we have to do that. So you only submit your application. You're trying to say that I am here to certify that I have no previous criminal record, and that will suffice. I don't think it will be a great deal for the candidates because all that information is available on the HCJ website. Actually, you either submit the old criminal record certificate, even though it might have passed due. I think it's valid for 3 months or something. If you already have it, you just submit it despite it might be invalid already, or you're just submitting your own declaration that you've never had any criminal record, and then we're going to be verifying your criminal past, so to say, or the absence of it through the Ministry of Interior. Hopefully you don't have any. So these are the key changes that have been the most significant. All the others are not that, big to mention. What I'd also like to tell you about from the very beginning, I think we're lucky because we already have sufficient number of candidate applications for the selection process to be deemed to have already been started successfully, because we need to select 64 individuals that will be admitted to the interviews, and out of them we will select 32 that we will recommend to the High Council of Justice, for the 16 of them to be appointed to HQCJ. As of yesterday, we already had 95 applications. One of them was revoked, so we think there are 94. And if we talk about gender equality, which has to be maintained in any kind of selection process, we have it. Not completely and perfectly equal. We have 63% of males, a little bit less percent of females. But anyways, if we refer to the current legislation, the law on the local election, which says 30% of any gender is sufficient to recognize gender equality as the one that's taking place. So we cannot be blamed for not maintaining gender equality in this case. So it's 63 versus 37. And this election will be taking place not according to the 50-50 principle across genders, but on the principles of integrity and professional competence, and as well as political neutrality. Regarding political neutrality, one of the candidates asked the question that he is now the member of the local legislature, but he cannot resign right now at this point of time, just because the local council will not accept such submissions and will not make the decisions, therefore, because they don't have any regular meetings these days, so he cannot get rid of his mandate. Do not confuse those two principles. One is filling the position in the local self-governments, and the issue of political neutrality. Those are absolutely different things. Any candidate will have to resign from the other positions, but that only should take place when you are already finally recommended to the High Council of Justice, and that will only take place on the third stage of this process. So now, if you fill any kind of position or you're elected as the member of the local legislature, there is not a big problem. You can be admitted to the selection process. However, in the vetting process, once we already go to the interviews and recommendation, you will have to resign. This is obvious, because otherwise you cannot combine the two positions, which is obvious. Regarding political neutrality, this is not only about whether you have or you don't have a mandate, but you don't have to be a member of any political party. You cannot be engaged in active public political activity or actively express your own political opinion in favor of a certain political force. This has to be also considered and kept in mind. Once again, we need to treat differently your current position or mandate versus your political activity. Regarding the professional composition of our candidates, at least that's the picture that we can see as of yesterday. From the total lot of 94 individuals, 41 are judges. As you can see, they're a bit less, so that's 43% for now. And the other legal professionals consist of 7 lawyers from the bar, and that is 13%. Civil service, another 22%. And the biggest share among non-political judges are academics, I mean, the scholars, academia. There is a dozen of individuals who have not yet submitted enough information, but I think before August the 22nd, all the docs will be submitted finally. So that's the professional composition of the candidates. Yevhen, taking advantage of my moderator's status, and because there was a question asked about that on the chat, there is a question came from one of the participants that he already checked all the samples of documents that must be submitted following the official link, but there is no application form about on the criminal record. It is not, it is an approved form, an approved template by our commission, and therefore, since the decision in July, there must be a template. Maybe you followed a legacy, an old link, and this, I mean, this declaration is not huge. If you want, I can read it, but I can actually share it somewhere here in the chat with you. Okay, so let us go to the next one. What are the key problems and mistakes that are being made by the candidates? Regarding the applications, this is to accept the background checks. So there is a consent. There are 2 separate documents. I don't think it's going to be a big deal, depending, I mean, from the fact that very often candidates sometimes think it's just one document. Actually, this is the document. It will be submitted together with a request for the special and background checks to the special body. So it would be advisable to you for you to make sure there are 2 documents. You also have to attach those 2 consents to your application, but those are 2 different documents. You need to keep that in mind, and how they have to be produced separately. In addition, in the previous stages, before we had a meeting in Warsaw in July this year to resume our operations, we'd had questions about the special and background check template, the form itself. I can't remember how it is called, but it was adopted earlier on before the full-scale aggression against Ukraine. And there's a moratorium for certain there's a ban on some background checks right now. Many people think that this is about the special background checks, namely for such a position that we are selecting the people for. However, NABU and the the National Agency on the Prevention of Corruption will still do the special background checks. Upon the request of the Commission, they will probably be called different, not maybe the integrity check. I don't think they will be called like they used to, like the security and background check. But that's definitely going to be happening. So the background and security checks will be conducted in this way or another. Again, regarding this big number of scholars and academia who are taking part in the selection process, I'm sure they will find enough goodwill to become not only the candidates, but eventually also HQCJ members. This is just a request from the Commission members and from our legal assistants, most of all, because they have been employed in our Commission. They need to also share the texts of their key thesis, their scientific research. This doesn't have to do with any articles for the media or any of their official presentations and speeches, but we ask them to submit those papers, those research papers that help them become PhDs or doctors of law. I realize that it might be difficult sometimes to actually to get those texts, but we will be happy to take a look at them from the standpoint of looking at the possible plagiarism. It might be difficult to retrieve those these days, but anyways, it would be very much appreciated if they happen to provide those papers with us. Those research works and theses are normally stored at the Vernadsky Library. And to get it, to retrieve it from there, that might be difficult, might be challenging, because you need to submit a request officially. And there are certain formalities that people will have to actually follow. To all the academia, there is a big request, so please submit those texts to our address electronically, send them to the Selection Commission. Thank you, Johan. I just want to make sure we follow the agenda and we stick to the timing. There is another question that I wanted to ask to Robert, because Robert said Johan will do most of the speaking, but Robert could say a couple of words about whether your interviews will be broadcast or they will be closed from the public.
Yes, I can say something about that. We have decided as a commission that we will follow the law and we will broadcast all the interviews completely. That's our position at present. It may change, but it is not likely that it will change. And we believe it is very important for the transparency of this process and the trust of the people of Ukraine, that everyone can see what's happening in those interviews. Of course, it depends on what will happen next in Ukraine, and we may shield off, let's say, really private information that may be dangerous. But all the candidates have to be prepared that if we do the interviews, that it will be streamed on the internet and it is available for everyone to see.
Дякую вам. Дякую. Ще одне
Thank you so
питання.
much. And there's another question to Mr. Yevhen Mezentsev. The question has just arrived. If the person is filling an administrative position at the court, should the person resign before the recommendation to HQCJ or after? Look, we take the general approach. If you take an administrative position, you cannot become an HQCJ member. That's obvious. But anyways, if you're submitting your papers to our commission, then of course we will have questions to you if you still continue to keep this administrative job. So at least at the interview stage, those people have to be free from any kind of administrative burdens. Because myself, I've been filling administrative jobs 4 times, and I don't think it will be efficient if someone's trying to combine the two jobs, both the administrative and at HQCJ. So please make sure that before the interviews, you do not have any administrative positions that you fill. That has to do with the other positions or mandates. It can be membership in trade unions, political parties, etc. That also applies. It's a one-stop approach to everybody, to all those items. When you're admitted to the interview, you better not have any administrative jobs or mandates anymore to avoid extra questions. Sometimes lawyers jointly ask the same question. And I have a question to those as well. That is, sometimes there is a disparity between the official revenues that they have declared and their actually welfare, their lifestyle. If there is difference, to avoid any issues there, they already have to get ready for it. It's not always the case that we can actually receive the asset declarations, especially the form number 5, which actually presents the comparison between the revenues and lifestyle. Regarding the motivational letter, I would like to mention this separately. That was the Roberts design, and his idea was to make sure that the person can concisely present him or herself to the commission, very briefly. And in all the 10 or I can't remember how many questions, you have to answer within 250 words maximum in each. Even before the competition, there had been a question, what if I write more? If you write more and it's 10 or 12 words more, it's not a problem. But if you are writing 1,000 words instead of 250, that will have a negative assessment. Concision is important here. You need to be able to express your points of view concisely. That's one of the skills that every HQCJ and every good legal professional needs to have. The motivational letters sometimes are 15 pages. People are writing 500 words in each section, and I don't think it's a good thing to do. It's still a question mark whether those people can actually be admitted to interviews. Yes, there are more questions that are coming. I just want to make sure we're able to answer all of them. Regarding the motivational letters, there are still questions about how, recommendations, how recommendations, letters of recommendation can be attached to the motivational letter. Can they be attached to the application, printed, signed? Should there be any kind of other signatures? Well, why would we make copies from the recommendation letters? A letter of recommendation is not a copy of the document that was created long ago. It's not your diploma. It's not your credentials. It's the author who writes the letter, confirms it with his or her signature that yes, this person is great, a great professional, a person that follows integrity. You don't need to actually prove those scanned copies with a notary signature or stamps or something. You just attach the original letter of recommendation and make just a good quality copies that can be shared electronically. Because probably around 30% of scanned copies are of poor quality. Can you make sure that the scanning quality is good to make sure we can read it? Otherwise, some of the texts are so much blurred that it's very difficult to read them. If an individual is being abroad right now and plans to be back in Ukraine in September, can this person still submit papers electronically and then upon coming back to Ukraine, these documents can be submitted by mail? There are one conditions for all. Electronically, you can submit those docs before August 22, as well as by regular mail also before August 22. What if it comes late, people ask? Look, it takes seconds to submit all the documents electronically. If you do it both at the same time, both electronically and hard copies, we will still count when the docs come over electronically. We will not have to submit them later. Just if you're abroad, send all the documents by mail services and at the same time electronically. There are postal services that can handle your envelope within days. So please, the deadline is August 22. At least if we receive it before August 22, and at the same time you will send it via any mail delivery service, we will still see it. If it comes on the 30th because of the postal issues, that's not a problem. But if you want to send the documents that you never submitted electronically, that's not going to be a good solution. So please don't be late for that train, figuratively saying. Thank you for this answer, because the answer regarding this is a frequently asked one, indeed. There is one more question. Can people submit their thesis electronically? Yes, of course, like I said. Yeah, indeed. It's not possible to do, but it's a must-do thing. Please send them electronically so that our assistants can have them analyzed. They will all undergo scrutiny, and the longer it's going to take us to look for those theses, the later your documents will be properly analyzed and you'll be submitted much later for interviews if you are. Regarding the motivation, motivation letter, because the question is about paragraph 9. No, for any section, whether it is section 9 or section whatever, the maximum limit is 250 words. Some of the questions might look similar, but they're not the same. You must be aware of that. The motivation to become an HQCJ member is probably there in many candidates, but sometimes motivation is very standard, as expressed in the letter. I think I'm going to build an independent judiciary based on the legal framework. I'm sick and tired of that same phrase. It looks like people copy and paste it from each other. Please don't write that. You are not building the judiciary in Ukraine. This is not your business. Your business is much more specific. And I'd like to tell to the candidates, please, do not write 200 pages about how you think you're going to improve life in Ukraine because you'll be reforming the Ukraine's judiciary. There must be an idea. Let it be small, let it be minute, but it's going to be yours. It's going to be your own idea, why you believe you're good enough for this position, what kind of contribution you'll be able to make into building professional and trustful judiciary. I'm going to give you my own example. I've been working for quite a long time. I've only had 18 years of my judicial experience, but I've been constantly thinking about an idea how to make sure the judicial core can get better. But the idea of our state and our government agencies is that we need to select the people with integrity. We will do that. But it's important that those people do not become corrupt in 5 or 10 years. Where does corruption come from? This comes from the Latin language. It means to spoil. Maybe we have good, honest, and well-motivated people, people who want to defend the law. But there is such a concept as behaviorism or conformity, when you follow what the others do. For instance, you are a good, healthy, never spoiled person. You're a judge, you come to the team which has problems with corruption and which tolerates corruption. In that team, because of this behaviorism and conformity, people can get spoiled over a short period of time. And I'm always wondering to know, how can we protect those new people that will be vetted into this system from this bad practice and this horrible malfunction of the system, which is suffering from this erosive corruption? How to keep those people away from being seduced by corruption? Of course, this can be done through asset declaration, through patriotism, through building the proper mindset. Of course, this will help the judiciary to recover. You can actually focus on how you can relieve stress in the existing judges. Can you imagine? You can write about that in the motivation letter. Can you imagine? You probably do. I still remember when I assumed this office. The first couple of years were just nightmare for me. It was just like inferno. I was sometimes waking up at night, and because I had a bad dream, a bad nightmare, that I'm not able to make a decision on a case. This was just a nightmare. How to avoid such situations? Please write about that. Why not? Show something small but tangible that you'll be able to change and do something much better for our country. You're not going to say that, yeah, I'm going to rebuild our judiciary completely in the country. You'll not be able to do that all alone. This can be done with a joint effort, and this is gonna take a while. Yevhen, we already have the effects from your answers because the new questions are coming. Is it possible to submit another motivation letter if the documents have already been submitted? Do so. You might have, you could change your mind. Why not? At least this is my vision. It's not a question that somebody is not satisfied with your motivation letters. This is just coming from our own experience. You can just bluntly say something very generic, because that never sounds convincing. You can never convince the commission members that you really know what you're talking about. Don't say something big that you can never grasp. Tell something specific that you understand in depth. Because you need to be a deep specialist. I'm going to be reforming the judiciary according to the legislation. That's not an answer. Well, there are some more questions here regarding the last name change. That's mostly happening with females. And in our association, that's a very apparent issue. What if females change their last name because they got married? Should they inform the commission about that? Yeah, the situation can be different. For instance, if you got married 4 times only this year, that's not a bad thing. But anyways, you need to supply the proofs that you have changed your last name. That has to be submitted. Apparently, you could get your diploma with your first last name, then you came to work in a court. Your last name was different. It was Johnson, and then it was Johnson, and it was Johnsonson, and etc. And then you got married 4 times, and that's finally you have a totally different last name. Because sometimes there can be a situation like this. Maybe they submitted their papers earlier on before the war, and then after the person could get married. So please provide the confirmation of your last name change. Or your first name, maybe, I don't know. There can be different situations. But
як негативний досвід, зміну прізвища.
I'm sure the commission will not be referring to the individuals changing his or her last name 4 times as something negative. No, unless you want to evade paying alimonies by this, and you change your last name because you want to evade the alimonies. Yeah, you have the full right, according to the civil code, to change your last name. Nobody's limited. And now we have a related question about the family members. In the sense of the Ukraine's legislation on the prevention of corruption, family members are the individuals
В законі України про запобігання
that are considered in the articles of the anti-corruption legislation. Indeed, this is the National Agency on the Prevention of Corruption that will be investigating everybody. We cannot actually go beyond the law. We will follow the procedures and everything that are implemented by NAPC, NACP. There's another, if Robert wants to add anything to this, so please, you're welcome anytime. Maybe you want to share any messages or good advice to our candidates. There's another question to Yevhen.
Як зараховується і обчислюється стаж
How the professional years, I mean, years in service are calculated. For instance, if the person went to the university first, and then later the person went for a postgraduate training program, daytime. Well, I don't think we can use any other approach but the one that is reflected in the legislation. However, there is no clear procedure that helps count the years in service. Let us be based on the traditions and the forms that are used by the human resources in the public service. If you have your legal education, your degree, and you're employed as a legal professional, then of course you need to add those years in service. Nadia, you're muted. Just a couple of words, if possible. If Robert would like to say anything, because we have limited timing for today. So please, whenever you want. And I would like to give an opportunity to ask a question here, right here online. I mean, a voiced one.
Ну, я думаю, що немає таких доповнень.
Since there are no more questions so far, I'm gonna ask some more questions. How many photos have to be supplied? Just one. The procedure clearly says there must be one electronic photo and one original hard copy photo. So you've seen that there are some of the requirements according to the decree of the Ministry of Interior, the order, I'm sorry. It's quite a large photo that you have to supply. The commission members, not all the commission members have ideal sight. That's why we would like to have bigger pictures of yours, not the smallest ones. Okay, one more question about the certificate. For the language command certificate. If an individual has a language certificate for B2, for instance, is it a good timing if the person can pass another exam a little bit later in October? Well, this is a very specific question. B2 is no good for civil servants in Ukraine. They have to be fluent in their Ukrainian language. You can start passing your exams if your exam is scheduled for the beginning of October. That's fine. And we decided to take a very democratic approach here. We do not demand those certificates to be submitted with the application only before the interview. I think before the 7th of October, you can already do that. Because this is our rough estimate. I think somewhere in the middle or at the end of October, the first interviews will take place. So do that before October the 7th, at least. And I want to wish you to pass this exam successfully. Also, again, to another question about the positive attitude to the candidates from the commission members. There's a question. Can we actually check whether the person commission has received the documents submitted by the candidate or if there are any remarks? You can write a letter to us and it will be considered. After we do all the work, our methodology says that prior to the interview, an individual can actually submit a request to the commission and verify if all the information is duly submitted, and if no documents are missing. Because then they will be allowed to submit the request. There is another question here. Can one candidate submit his or her candidacy for this selection process if this person has already taken part in the other competitions? No problem. You are not limited. Well, again, regarding the procedure, you submit your papers. They do the background and security check. I don't know how long it's going to last given the wartime, the martial law situation that we have. Hopefully, it's going to be done swiftly. The thing is that out of the candidates that have submitted their papers a little bit earlier, we're now trying to actually pass their files to NABU and NAPC by batches, like 30 candidates put together their files and submit there. So at least we wanted that way to speed up this process. Then we're gonna figure out the list of the individuals who will be admitted to interviews. 64 people, roughly. Hopefully, everybody who wants to submit their papers before the deadline. Then we're gonna have another dozen of people more before August 22. So then we're gonna have more than 100 candidates. And then we agreed with the commission, among the commission members, that the selection and admission for the interviews for those 64 individuals who will be invited for those open interviews, their list will be approved by a separate decision of the selection commission. But we don't want this selection process to be treated as the negative vetting process. No, we're only selecting the best ones. We take this positive selection approach. We're not planning to produce any negative opinions about any of the candidates in all our stages. You know why? Because you can work for your entire life in a district Department of Justice. You can actually be a very highly respectful person and a very knowledgeable one about the about the entire framework, about the system, about the penitentiary, or whatever. But you might not compete with the other candidates, because that's why you'll be not invited for the interviews. And it's not because you're a bad employee. That's why we decided, together with the other selection commission members, to only maintain our positive selection approach. To all the other people, we'll just say thank you, and we'll be waiting for you next time. That's it. There is a question to Mr. Robert, as the selection commission member. Do you think you are going to be involved in this selection process in an online mode or in person? Especially that's important for the interviews. Are you going to be available online or offline as well?
The idea that we have at present is that when we perform the interviews, and to add what Jefjan said, at present the planning is that we will do our first interviews the end of October, beginning of November. And we will have 9 days or 10 days to do that. And the second batch of interviews we will do early January. And the idea is that because we didn't find it a good idea that all of us sit behind screens on different locations. So what we have decided is that the selection commission will be together in one room somewhere, which of course we hope will be Ukraine. And if that is not possible for foreigners to travel to Ukraine, it will be just outside of Ukraine. We will be together performing those interviews. So the interviews will be online, and they will be, but what you will see as the interviewed individual is the 6 of us in one room, and any one of us may be asking questions to you if that is what the members want to do. And in that way, we try to be as natural as we can be, even though it's an online interview. Is the answer clear enough, Haley?
Дякую, дуже зрозуміло. Ми розуміємо, яка
Thank you.
зараз
That is very clear. We realize what kind of situation, how bad the situation is in Ukraine. And of course, presently, we cannot tell decisively what's going to be the way to handle all those interviews, whether it's going to be online or offline. It all depends on the situation, how it evolves. Yeah, I just wanted to add something. You just need to realize that we presume that we need to work together in the same room at the same time. Like Robert said, we need to be in the same room. However, you know, the situation may be much stronger than we are. The circumstances may be too bad. Somebody will not be able to travel outside. Somebody else will not be able to travel in Ukraine. For instance, we have commission members from the North America, 2 of them. And of course, so far the plan is to do in-person interviews. We might be, though, in one place and the candidate will be in another, but we would like to avoid a situation when we are doing all the interviews online. Because this way people can actually look at the different sources of information, have some tips around them. There's not yet a decided plan completely. Right now, what we are thinking about, it would be great to have 4 interviews every day. So it's an 8-hour working day, 2.5 hours for each. So maybe less than 2 hours, I believe, to take a short break. So we run those interviews for 2 weeks, for example, at the end of October, beginning of November. That's the first batch. And then the next phase will only come in early January. So those are just preliminary ideas. That's not something that is decided. But roughly that's the way we're thinking about it. Well, we don't have a lot of time remaining, but if the participants have any questions that they would like to ask that we never discussed before, so please go ahead and ask them directly here in the webinar by just turning on your microphone, and please ask for the floor by raising your hand. I will then see that your hand is raised and I will be able to give you the floor. If possible, Nadia, I have several questions that I received on Facebook and on our address, and then we will listen to the questions from the participants if possible. Let me move to the question of Mr. Torhovitz. He asked about his mandate. I already answered this question. You'll be admitted to the selection, but before the interviews start, you have to actually resign from your status. You have to give it up. Then there was another question about the 22nd of August. Is it enough to submit the documents to the regular mail, to the email address, or they have to be supplied physically to the regular mail? Please make sure you submit it before the 22nd of August, electronically at least. And regarding the scanned copies, we already answered that one. Thank you very much. And maybe the colleagues of ours have more questions to ask. Please go ahead.
Бачу одну руку, пане
I can
Ігор.
see Igor Shevyakov.
Доброго дня, ближче, друже, пане Євгене.
Hello, Yevhen.
Вам знайома
Hi
ситуація
there.
з адміністративною посадою.
You know the situation with the administrative positions.
Трошки роз'яснення.
If you can give us a little bit more explanation. I am now opening the application form about no restrictions there, and it says, I'm committed that in case I'm appointed as an HQCJ member, that I will have to resign all the other positions from the other positions. But why should we actually give up all the positions before the interviews? Look, you actually need to have at least an intent of resigning. If you want to be recommended as part of the 32 candidates, the commission needs to make sure that you comply with the requirement. So when you're recommended, you need to have no other status but this. There was a question at the beginning of our operations. One person was the chief judge with no other judges in the court. So this was a court of one individual, of one judge. So somebody has to do the job. Somebody has to actually make sure the court works. Of course, that's a difficult one. That situation is much more challenging than any other. But anyways, at the interview stage, you have to get rid of all the other statuses and mandates. Definitely, this is going to be one of the parameters for your successful progression to the other phases. I'm just asking this not because we want to keep our job so badly, but it's just because what if you're not passing to the next phase and you've already given up? Yes, that's clear. Sometimes you work with a team and many things depend on you in your institution. But actually, if you've decided to apply for this position, you will have to actually hand over all your functions to someone else, or take a vacation and assign an acting chief or acting manager, whatever. Pick the most experienced person and make him or her an acting chief or acting whatever employee. I understand that this is a disputable issue. I'm only expressing my own opinion, but I cannot talk for our international experts, of course. They might have a different opinion about that. Thank you. Thanks a lot for your answer. And you see, there is an option that we've heard about how you can resolve this issue. We have two more questions from our participants, from Alexei Horokh, who is asking about submitting the documents electronically. Is that only for those individuals who cannot supply their documents in hard copies? That applies for everybody. Hard copy, so paper-based copies via regular mail or courier service, and electronic copies. They are much more valuable for us because our assistants are working with those papers primarily electronically. So please pay very close attention that you need to have the scanned copies or readable format documents, because a lot depends on this, because this will greatly affect how quickly we will realize that you're admitted to the interviews. We have a question from Irina Davidovich. I'm an associate professor of criminal policy at Kharkiv Legal University. Well, I have my thesis, which is 20 years old. Do I have to submit a list of my scientific publications? Well, it will all affect our understanding of your professional competence. This is one of the criteria that we will be investigating. If you think it's going to contribute to the commission members' better attitude to yourself as a high-end professionals, yes, please submit those documents. It's all up to you. But if that's about scientific research or thesis, you know, that question arose a couple of days ago, because regarding the scholars we had, a certain gap. We've never thought about that problem before. We never even discussed it because we didn't see any major issue in there. But now to find the text of your thesis, which is 20 years old, in open sources seems to be quite challenging. And sometimes they're not available. But we need to investigate those because there are certain software solutions which will help investigate if there's any plagiarism in your research and development. Maybe somebody has had plagiarism, which will prove, or maybe somebody will copy their thesis from yours that will confirm that you're a great source of scientific information. Well, you can never verify if there is plagiarism there because not all of them are available online. Okay, then the list of my research works and the text of the thesis. Yeah, believe me, this way you will demonstrate that you're trying to be as much open as possible in trying to prove your professional competence. Moreover, that will contribute to an attitude to you as an open person. Thank you very much for the questions and answers. We still have one more question on Facebook. If in our professional life, in legal profession, it's not a job, so it's not an occupation. I didn't quite understand the question. I didn't understand it either. If you're a legal professional, but you're not, this is not your occupation physically. If we have the criminal record certificate, there was another one because that first question was not clear. Because to confirm, well, because because the papers can be quite heavy sometimes. And what if the throughput capacity does not allow this to be sent in one letter? Send it in several. And how can I confirm my years in service as a lawyer? Look, you can confirm your lawyer status and the years in service through the official means, since you were licensed to do so. It's just the same proof as in the selection process to the higher anti-corruption court and the Supreme Court as well. So don't think we are taking here different approaches. We're no different here. This is your certificate, lawyer certificate, and we can definitely tell that that's the beginning of your lawyer's career. But please don't waste time. There's not much time remaining. It's only less than a week to go. I can see no more raised hands, no more questions online. I think we have already verified all of them on Facebook and all the other social media. So I think we're going to be closing our conference. Well, regarding the years in service and professional activity, let's say that person who asked the question, if you can please be more specific about what you meant in your question, and you can actually ask it on our Facebook page, where the selection commission members and our assistants will think about and provide you with an answer after the end of today's event. Because you mean, I mean, you asked the question very vaguely without any specific details, so it's difficult to actually answer. All right, then we're going to be closing our today's event. I'm sure that today's webinar was successful. It has provided us with a lot of answers, and now we have many more ideas and opportunities to actually successfully submit the files to the selection commission. I want to thank you very much for your information. It's great to know that a lot of females are applying to the High Qualification Commission of Judges. It means that you are very professional people. It means you're great individuals, and we would like our judicial corps to be supported by highly professional, highly encouraged, great people who will help indeed build our judiciary as a more successful institution and also bring back the trust to the judiciary and the judicial power. I would like to give the floor to Robert for the closing remarks. Please, Robert.
Well, thank you all for listening to mainly Yevgen, and I hope you all apply. And I would call upon especially the women to apply, because even though the percentages are in accordance with the law, of course, we need to have more females applying, and in my view, also more females in the new commission that should be put together. There's one other thing. I think, Yevgen, that we need to discuss about the administrative position and how we should deal with that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
I would suggest that we will discuss it among us, and we will give an answer on Facebook when we have a good solution and reached agreement on that.
For sure.
Thank you very much. Thank you for listening.
Дякую вам.
Thank you very much. I really loved what you said, that we need more women to be applying to the selection process. I'm fully supportive of that. Regarding the closing remarks, I would please give the floor to you, Yevhen. Thank you very much, Nadia. I'm so much grateful for being so optimistic about our today's conversation together. I hope that people who have chosen to do so in the last minute, hopefully we have helped them. So please submit your files. We would like to have more judges and specifically more women, because there are not enough women, I'm sure, and not enough judges specifically, because we would like to be as close as possible to 50-50. At least this is my personal opinion. When we are recommending 32 individuals to the High Council of Justice, it would be great to see 16 judges there and 16 non-judicial professionals to bring this equity, so that there is no competition in between themselves, and on the other hand, to avoid any kind of discrimination claims. Because if we recommend 10 judges and 22 other legal professionals, it's not going to be just enough. Because for judges, the chances will be much higher, while with the other legal professionals, they will be much lower. So we would like to encourage more judges to participate. And thank you very much for finding the time to participate in today's meeting. Thank you very much, Yevhen, for this very useful advice and for the information that you have kindly shared. If any of the participants would like to share their comments and say a couple of words, because I, as a moderator, have a chance to give you an opportunity to speak up. Well, I think you still need to digest this information, because we received some new inputs during today's meeting. And finally, it's up to you to make the decision and submit your application and other papers. Don't waste time. Take your time. I want to thank you very much for your participation, and it is my great pleasure and hope. My name is Nadia, which is translated as a hope. I'm sure everything will be great and the selection process will be successful and the winners shall prevail. Thank you.
Thank you.
Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes.